Hello, Soul family. Welcome. It's your girl, Kinsey Poetic Soul, and I have with me Mrs. Felicia Wells, who is the new First Lady of my hometown church that I grew up in, Carver Memorial Presbyterian Church in Newport News, Virginia. And her husband have been at the church. He just became pastor in December. So it's been about 2 years. And I am going to interview her and learn a little bit more about her and her life story and how she got here. So I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, Kenzie and Kenzie's family out there in cyberspace world. Um, Actually, my name is pronounced Felicia. It's 4 syllables. I get a lot of the bye, Felicia, but I get it because all my life growing up, I just got tired of correcting people. So I was like, fine. But part of me coming into my life as a woman is like, but that's not how your name is pronounced. And
I'm
you have to
sorry.
be okay with helping people. No, no, no. It's part of my journey, Kenzie.
Right.
It's part of my journey. It's pronounced Felicia. My granddad and my mom came to that consensus. And I'm grateful for my name because actually it's Spanish for
Oh, wow.
happiness. And so Lord knows that I strive every day to have be in that spirit in my life. But I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Kenzie, for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to tell my story. It's something that I often find myself sharing, and then I'm thinking, they didn't ask me about my life, did they? I'm so grateful to God though for the journey, the hills and the valleys. I grew up, born and raised in on the south side of Chicago, Chicago, Illinois. Go Bears, go Cubs, go Bulls.
I've been in Chicago. It's cold.
Just got to get that out there. Um, I am I was my grandparents' first grandchild. I actually have an uncle who is 2 years older than me. So
Wow.
I grew up thinking that I grew up thinking that my grandparents were my parents. Because when you got a 2-year-old uncle who's calling your grandma ma, it's just like, yeah, that's my ma. You
Right.
know, love, 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 love my family. Such an awesome family. My grandparents had 5 daughters and 2 sons. So being the oldest granddaughter, after having raised 5 daughters, my grandparents and my family, they had different plans for my life other than what I had. I knew that there was something special about my life because from as far back, I can remember back to 2 years old, which kind of creeps my mom out. She's like, how do you remember that? You're only 2. And I'm like, I know, but I remember. And I can describe where we lived, what the house looked like, what my room was in conjunction to her room and the kitchen. And
Wow.
she's always in awe when I tell stories about us growing up. I'm the oldest of 3 siblings. I have a sister and a brother. But my mom's siblings to me were my siblings. Um, all professional women. So if you can imagine, I was born in the 60s. So I just missed the cutoff. I am a baby boomer. Um, my mother and her siblings, they were definitely involved in the civil rights activism, um, even being members of the Black Panther Association. They were very radical,
Right.
militant, but they were also some of the most loving, funny people. Just thinking about holidays and family and being being a part of I call it a tribe. I call it a tribe. At one point, all of us lived in my grandparents' home. So if you can imagine living in a home with 20 people at one
Wow.
time, life is very interesting.
That's
And
in.
I think that part of my personality kind of developed from having all these other personalities in my life, especially as it came to spirituality, because I had an aunt that was Catholic. My mom, she was Lutheran. My other aunt was a member of an AME church. My other aunt was Buddhist, her and my uncle.
Wow.
And then I had another aunt who was more of a kind of Scientology type of, we are our own God type of individual. So if you can imagine on any given Sunday, Kenzie, I was going to these different locations to worship their God. I'm going to call it their God because when you're little, you only know what's taught to you.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, so needless to say, having all of that spiritual influence was confusing. I was to a point where I was like, I need to find out who God really is because, this church says this, and then this church, they worship this way. And the irony for me was the denominations that were considered church all use the same book. So I was like, how do you have all these different views, but we're all reading from the same storybook? So that was kind of growing up.
Yeah.
I graduated from high school at 16, so very early. I was so excited to go off to college. I was going to pursue theater. And my grandparents thought I was too young to be away from home. I had chosen a college that was about an hour and a half from our home, and they just thought I was too young to be on a campus with 18 and 19-year-olds. So though I had been accepted in the school, they pulled me out.
Oh no.
So that was when I can say I developed my first taste of rebellion. I was like, well, I'm not going to college. Forget college. I'm just going to go, I'm going to find a job and go to work. And I began to work in the workforce. I found that I was really good in customer service. Um, I think you're frozen. Should I keep going?
Yeah, just keep going. I can still see myself. So
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
No, it's okay. I wasn't sure if I needed to because I was like, okay, she's not moving. Oh, her screen is frozen. Yeah. But I just began to work customer service jobs. I realized I had a gift for working with people, solving other people's problems. And I worked with some of the top Fortune 500 companies developing customer service programs through cable industry, through satellite, HBO, banking. I even worked for the government. And mind you, I always had a great paying job, which was so surprising to my family because I didn't have a college education.
Right.
All of my family members had gone off to college, my grandparents' children, and gotten degrees. I had an aunt that was a correctional officer. One aunt was a registered nurse in the military, in the Army. Wow. Another aunt was a branch manager at a bank. My mother was an executive secretary for a credit card company. And then my other aunt, actually the one who I probably had the closest relationship to, she was an artist. And she wound up with the Chicago Symphony Orchestra, which you're talking 1970s. That was huge. So when you have all these women from these professional backgrounds that are inspirational to you, but your path is not theirs. I was always good at math. So my family would say, you should be an accountant. And I was really good at accounting, loved it, but it was boring to me. Right. I knew that there was something more that I wanted to do. We would have parties at our home and I would always be the family's entertainment. I'd get my mom's wigs and I put on her heels and her dresses. And I was a pantomime artist. I never really could sing well, but I could pretend to sing well. So I would perform and, everybody would love it. And then I would get involved in talent shows in the community, at the community center. And I remember thinking, this is what I want to do with my life. This is so much fun. This doesn't seem like work to me. But again, my family was like, no, you need a real job. So needless to say, honoring and respecting my family, I stuck to the working world. The year was 1985. So I'm 4 years out of high school and I got two good friends. And I said to them, they got some talent shows at all these different clubs that we go to. We should get us a little girls group and perform. We could win first prize because, I figured we were all cute. We were fashionistas.
Right.
So we decided to come up with a group and I named our group Perfection.
Perfection. Oh, wow.
Perfection. Perfection. And we would go to different nightclubs and perform female group songs because then in the 80s, the female groups were starting to get
Wow.
really big. And so we noticed that we were good at it. We won first prize every contest we entered.
Oh my
And
God.
then people would start tipping you. And I was like, they're giving us money. Like, we're going to leave here tonight with cash. Like,
Right.
this is amazing. So, needless to say, I started booking us in every nightclub we could possibly be booked in.
Wow.
And I remember this one particular story. I'm not going to say his name, but there was this pimp in Chicago, very famous, and he had a nightclub. So he was
Oh,
having a talent contest, and my friends and I went, and we won first prize. And so when we came out of the dressing room, a gentleman walked up to us and said, "So and so wants you all to come and join him. He has a table for you all." And he had gotten us a bottle of champagne, and there were flowers, and we were like, "Oh my God."
wow.
And we're all excited, but we were young and
Right.
naive, Kenzie. And I remember this older woman came over to the table and she said, "Get your bags and get out of here. You hang around here tonight and your family won't ever see you again." Because we didn't know that he was a pimp.
Yeah.
And we were like, "Oh." So we took our little bags, we ran to our car. And after that, my friends were like, "This has been fun, but we don't want to do this anymore."
Right.
And I was like, "Are you all kidding me?" So hence our group
Broke up.
split. And I continued to work, but always in my heart, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be an actress. I knew I wanted to be involved in, I didn't know what capacity. I didn't have dreams of going to Hollywood, but I just liked entertaining. And so I continued to work. Then years later, we just kind of fast forward. After I had my first child, I said, I'm a mom now. And if my daughter wanted to do something in her life, would I support her? And that was the catalyst
Mm,
that made me decide, you know what? I'm going to go back to doing what I enjoy.
that is so.
So I worked during the day, but at night I would go and perform at different nightclubs.
Right.
Um, because again, I found clubs that were having contests, and I didn't necessarily even care about the winning. I just wanted to be in front of an audience.
Right.
And so I had some signature performers that I would imitate, like Mary J. Blige, Anita Baker,
Wow.
Erica Badu, and really good at it.
I
And
would
I
love to
would go
see
to
one
these
day.
clubs, but some of the clubs were gay clubs, and a lot of the performers were female impersonators. And
Oh,
so I'd be in these clubs and I'd be terrified. I'd always get dressed in my car. I never got dressed in the dressing room with them.
really?
Uh,
Oh my.
and and it's so funny because I love RuPaul's Drag Race. I think they're phenomenal what they do. But at this time, for me, it was kind of like little girl grew up with this family in the church, kind of sheltered.
Right.
So this was a whole new world for me.
Right.
But I found it fascinating. And the people, how the people responded to them sharing their talents. And so the first night that I got up, I was shaking like a leaf.
Well,
But as soon as my music came on and I came out and I started doing my Anita Baker and I had my sway, and I could hear the roar of the crowd.
amazing.
The next thing I know, there was just money flying all around me. And I
For
was
real?
like, am I dreaming this? And by the end of the night, I had won first prize, which was $250, and I had over $200 in tips. So I go home with $450 for 6 minutes worth of work.
Wow, that's amazing.
I was like, I love this. So, needless to say, I stopped working. I quit my job. I think I was working for Blue Cross or Blue Shield or something. I quit my job. I said, this is what I'm going to do full time. And then I started going around to different theater companies. I didn't have like a resume or headshots. I would just go. When I would hear about auditions, I would go. And that's when I knew what God had created me to be. I was an artist. And so, needless to say, I can tell you that, Kenzie, for 10 years, I took care of myself and my children just working theater and nightclubs,
Wow.
filing my taxes and everything. I was like, oh, I can claim my makeup? Yes, and my hair? Oh,
Oh,
yeah, this is
oh
this
wow.
is this is gonna work for me. Um, just being so enamored with that life. And I mean, and people would be so excited when I felt like a real celebrity. My daughter always tell me, Mom, you're a local celebrity
Yeah,
in
you were.
Chicago. But and even now, sometimes when I go home and I run into people, they're like, hey, didn't you used to perform at such and such? And I'd be like, yeah. They're like, you still look the same. I'm like, hey man, you know. But needless to say, that life also had its downside.
Really?
Some of my darkest moments were those times when I was an entertainer, um, especially in the nightlife. Sometimes the shows wouldn't start until 12 or 1 o'clock, which means that I wouldn't be home until 4 and 5. And thank goodness for my mom. I was a single mother, and but my mom was there. She was always, supportive, especially when she was like, "You made that? Are you sure that's all you doing?" I'm like, "Ma'am, I promise you, I'm not doing anything else. I'm not." And that was the thing for me because I knew strippers could make that kind of money, but I didn't think that I could and not have to take off my clothes.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh yeah," that was not to say I was better than anybody, but I had found something that people appreciated and that worked for me.
Right.
But there were some dark moments. Um, One in particular I can share because I think for young women, it's important to know who you spend your time around and to make sure that you're around people that you know are going to take care of you. I had an instance where I was drugged. Someone put something in my drink. And even to this day, with the exception of my husband, if I'm somewhere and I have a drink and I forget to lay it down, I pour it out and get another one. I don't care if it's even water. It was the most horrifying night of my life.
Oh my God.
Anytime you don't remember going from this location to this location, and I just remember one thanking God that I came out of it with my mind still intact
Right.
because I had seen people in my neighborhood that had happened to, and they never came back mentally.
Right.
And so at that point, I started to question God. Okay, God, what are you trying to tell me? Then there was another instance where um, I was at a friend's house and we were playing games and we kind of like a girls' night. And she had made this punch. And I want to say maybe it wasn't a punch, maybe it was like a Long Island iced tea or something. I had one Long Island iced tea my whole life. That night, I literally was cross-eyed. And I remember being in my car, and I was only about 10 minutes from home. And I said, I should be okay. But I wasn't okay.
Mm.
And back then I smoked cigarettes. And I think I smoked it because it looked good, but I hated the smell. And I remember driving with the window down, trying to sober myself, thinking if I smoke this cigarette, this will help. And the cigarette fell out of my hand. So I'm driving and the cigarette's down here on the floor. And I know I had to been so intoxicated because I tried to reach and get the cigarette while I'm driving. Well, when I lifted my head, I was headed toward a concrete wall.
Oh my goodness.
And I just remember calling, screaming out the name of Jesus.
Mm.
Jesus, save me, save me. And literally my car stopped within inches of the wall, but the wheels went up the wall.
Mm.
So here I am in a car that's tilted like this, crying my eyes out. And the next thing I know, there's a tow truck emergency road person pulling me out of the car.
Wow.
And he said, you must have some people praying for you.
God was on your side.
So I recognized then that, okay, I've got to get back to what I really didn't ever think I had, which was a relationship with God. And I have a story where I was 9 years old, and I feel like I had an encounter with the Holy Spirit. I was going down, I was at a neighbor's house and we were napping, and she woke me up. She says, go to your house and get some sugar. She was going to make Kool-Aid. So I lived in a courtyard building. So she was in one entrance and we were in another. So she lived on the third floor. So I had to go down, walk across the courtyard, and then go up 3 flights to my apartment to get the sugar. But I guess I was so tired because we had been out playing all day. It was summertime. We had been playing in the sun and had the fire hydrant going. So kind of one of those sleeps where you're just dead tired.
Right.
And I wound up actually in the basement, not going out of the courtyard. And I got down there and it was dark, and I guess I was confused, and I saw a crack of light. So I thought it was the door. And when I pulled it, it was like this big piece of heavy metal slab. And the weight of it is what woke me. And by that time, I recognized that it was heavier than my 9-year-old body could push. And the slab landed on top of me.
Oh my
Boom.
goodness.
So they found me in the basement, and it hit me here in the mouth, knocked my tooth completely out, root and all.
I'm so
And but I remember a shadow coming, and we're moving the door and saying, you're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. And so, of course, by the time they find me, the door is to the side of me.
mm.
And I remember telling my mom, Jesus came. Jesus saved me. And so the landlord was trying to say, oh, no, there's no such thing. Because by this time, he got there and tried to bolt up the door and tried to deny it. And my mom's like, there's her tooth right there. And, just the whole thing. But for me, it was that encounter with the Holy Spirit.
Right.
And I knew then that there was something greater than my grandparents, greater than my mom. There was another force in this world that loved me. And I think that night of that accident I had, and me calling on Jesus and asking him to save me, and he did. And so that was the catalyst where I decided, you know what, I'm going to commit my life to Christ. So I had a coworker, and he had invited me to his church, and he says, I'm going to have one of the women in the church call you. And there was a young lady, she was single, and she would come and pick me and my kids up and take us to church. And I studied the Bible for 3 months. I said, if I'm going to become a Christian, I want to know what my responsibility is. You know, that's a relationship. So, like any other relationship, you have a side, a responsibility, and the other person does. And I wanted to know what God wanted from me in return. So I studied the Bible, and the scripture that convicted me was, you have to count the cost. That if you will follow me, you have to leave your mother, father, sister, brother. You have to give up even your own life and carry your cross every day. And that was the scripture when I said, I do. I was like, I'm ready. Because it meant that all of the things that I had learned from all those different religions growing up, and even the things that I had learned just from being in the world, um, it all kind of came together for me. So in December 10th of 2000, I decided that I committed my life to Christ and I was baptized and I became a born again disciple of Jesus Christ. And I tell you, Kenzie, it was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life, ever. If I could do it every day, I would. I would, just because of how much God has shown me his love for me, even in my wretched days.
Right.
And I still have a couple of wretched days.
Right. We all do.
I say I'm yeah, I say I'm bougie and ghetto, but in a ratchet kind of way. But but I love him so much, and I thank him for saving me, saving my life, um, giving me an opportunity to share my testimony that might be a blessing to someone else. And it's so funny because, well, we'll move forward. I was living in Chicago, and I decided that I, I I was raising kids. I had my son at the time was 11, and I was a single parent. And I said, I don't want to raise my kids in a major city, especially Chicago, because Chicago's, it's different than I was when I grew up. And I wanted to, mainly for the sake of my African American son, I wanted to find a town that was a little bit smaller that I could better manage as a single parent. So I decided I would move to Louisville, Kentucky.
Wow.
And that's where my story picks up, where I meet the wonderful Pastor Wells. But at the time, I had gotten enrolled at the University of Louisville, and I was going to do a double major. I was going to do um, engineering, electrical engineering, and theater. And I had gotten approved and everything. And so, but they wouldn't give me in state tuition. And I was like, I can't afford $30,000 a semester for an undergrad degree.
Wow.
So someone said, well, there's a little Bible college not too far from here. And you can go there and get an associate's. And then maybe they'll recognize you because you've gotten a degree in the city, in the state, and you can come back to University of Louisville. Well, it didn't happen. I got to the Bible college. And at first I thought God was taking my theater away. And I was like, God, you know how much I love theater? I don't want to lose that. But he had to show me that no, theater is going to be your ministry. And I was like, aha! I love God is so awesome.
He is. He
And
is.
so, yeah, and so I'm like, okay. So I'm there, and I remember sitting at home, and the phone rang, and it was Dr. Wells. And Dr. Wells says, uh, Miss Dixon, I hear you're a theater person. And, we have a student government association. Is there any way you think we could utilize or incorporate some theater? Because we need to kind of get out in the community. And I said, well, absolutely. I said, the best way to do it is to build relationships with the parents through the children. So he was like, well, do you think you could help us out? I said, sure, because I wasn't performing. I wasn't doing anything but going to school and taking care of my kids. And I started a drama club at the college. And what we did over the summer, we had a summer theater camp, kind of like what we had here.
Right.
But we only had a little bit of money and a little bit of time. So I held auditions and we decided we were going to do the whiz. And kids in the community came out and auditioned. And we put on a phenomenal show, 2 nights in a row, sold
Wow.
out. And so it was a way for the college to get invested in the community because Pastor Wells was responsible for getting the college not only national accreditation, but HBCU status because the school had been built in 1872 by slaves.
Wow.
So it qualified to be an HBCU. So my alma mater is actually the last school to be implemented as an HBCU. It is the 107th HBCU.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And yeah, so I graduated, got my degree is actually in religious studies.
okay.
And okay, I was like, okay, now I need to decide, where I'm going to work. And I remember him calling me up saying, we need some more elective classes. How do you feel about teaching a theater class? We've never had one. And I was like, really? I was like, I thought you needed more degrees to teach. He was like, you're an actress and you've worked in theater because I had worked with some amazing theater companies in Chicago. One was one of my favorite was I worked with Gwendolyn Brooks' daughter.
Wow.
She had a children's theater company. And that's when I started doing children's theater. I was kind of doing adult theater, but I remember I had a character who was a little risque, and I had invited my whole family to come and see me. And I remember being so embarrassed on stage. I'm on stage making out with another actor with my family in the audience.
Oh,
I
wow.
knew then that I didn't want to do any more adult theater. Yeah. And so I just started doing children's theater. Yeah. So he said, I think you'd be a great theater teacher. So needless to say, started a theater class. I had the highest retention rate out
Wow.
of every class on campus. And it was a 100 level class. But I said, the only way that you can understand theater is to do theater. So we would put on productions. And for me, theater is about coming up with solutions for the problems that we have within our community. Because right now, all we have control over is the little piece of land where our family, our church, for you as a teacher, those are the people whose lives you have the greatest impact on. And
Absolutely.
so you have to kind of start there. And that's how we would create different plays and skits based on, well, what are our challenges in this community? Well, we know it's drugs, alcoholism, we know it's racism. We're here in the South. Sexism, because a lot of churches, especially in the South, I know in Kentucky, they're not necessarily believe in female pastors,
I'm sure.
females leading churches.
I'm sure.
So we started to address all these issues in theater and create little vignettes. And it became very effective. People in the community would come out. And I was just really happy to see how something that I had such a passion for could be so impactful and put people in a position where they wanted to change, wanted
Right.
to be different, wanted to be an agent of change in their community.
Powerful.
Um, yeah. So I just continued, and of course, needless to say, um, my relationship with Dr. Wells, we had built a great friendship, and then the friendship kind of turned into a little bit of a romance, and we found ourselves packing up and moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where we came here from.
Okay.
And at the time, he was the dean over the doctorate program,
Okay.
and we came here for a visit to the pastors conference at Hampton in
Interesting.
2018. And he came home one day because I had been trying to find a theater job in Pittsburgh. 7 applications, 7 rejections.
Oh, no.
I was like, God, what is it? I know I'm qualified,
Right.
but that was because he was getting ready to transition us here. And God knows me. He knows if I'm doing something I love, it would be hard for me to walk away from it. So that's my belief, that he told me no 7 times. And sometimes it's okay, because I think about it, he always has something greater in store. And he did. Hence, we wound up here in Newport News, Virginia. And one of the things that I had always wanted to do was to start my own nonprofit children's theater company. And I had attempted it in Kentucky, it didn't work. I had attempted it in Pennsylvania, it didn't work. I got here, I had my nonprofit in 2 months.
Wow. That's amazing.
God.
God.
Yeah. So for me, theater is God's way of showing the world itself.
Absolutely.
We have that responsibility as actors, as artists, as writers. We have to write about the human condition.
Absolutely.
You know, you're a writer.
It's healing.
Yeah. And for that, it speaks to the heart of a person differently. Not to say that the word of God is not a powerful word that can impact and change your life, but God in his wisdom, I believe he also knows that our lives become walking Bibles.
Absolutely.
Because some people may not have that relationship, but because you do, and then having a relationship with you, their life starts to take on a turn. And it could be just something you share, or an act of kindness. You know, I tell people all the time, I say, I love the book of Esther, because though God's name is not mentioned not one time, his presence is evident. And so I kind of see that as artist in that way, though that we may not walk around quoting scriptures all day, that his spirit, especially if you've made a decision to have that relationship, it lives within you, and it can have a powerful impact on people no matter where you go.
Absolutely. And first of all, I think your story is amazing. It's the things that you've been through. It's incredible. And I think you're so right about the power of art to change people, and the role that we play as artists in making the world a better place through art, and forcing people to confront themselves through art. So I just want to ask you one one closing question. If you could give your younger self a piece of advice after everything you've been through, all the trials, the journeys, the ups and downs, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Always lead with love.
Mm.
Always lead with love. Yeah. It's powerful.
It is.
It is powerful. It is, God is love. It is powerful. And I think that when you do that, you open yourself up to amazing opportunities, relationships, um, advantages.
Absolutely.
Because that in itself is a catalyst for allowing the world to see God through you. So lead with love.
Lead with love.
That's what I tell my younger self. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. Even when it's hard, even when people have hurt you, even when people are disappointing you, let you down, turn their backs on you. you walk away still leading with love,
With love.
because that's what's going to save you.
Absolutely. And like you
That's
said,
what's
God
going
is
to
love.
save you.
God is
I,
love.
yeah. And he is the most amazing. There's no other way to describe it. And it's freeing, because he says he is the truth, the light, and the way.
Yeah.
And with that relationship, and I even tell my children, we have a blended family of six, and our daughter, Amber, the one that's here at home with us, our youngest. And it's always important for us to tell them you can only be who God created you to be. And stay true to yourself.
Absolutely.
Stay true to what the Spirit of the Lord, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, stay true. Be your authentic self. And you'll know when you're on that path. You'll know when you're on the right path, because that voice inside you, it speaks to you all day.
It's so freeing to
I so
people.
appreciate you, Kenzie.
Yes, and I definitely appreciate you. I thank you. I definitely enjoyed. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And until next time,
Thank you, everybody.
until next time, stay blessed.